Hey there, welcome. Today, I want to dive into something that I believe could shake up the housing market in California. If you've been following me for a while, you know I'm usually pretty optimistic about the real estate market, not just here in California, but across the entire country. In that optimism, it's not just wishful thinking. It's based on solid facts. California's housing market has always been a standout. It's strong, it's resilient, and it's a market that bounced back from much of what's happened in the past. But right now, what's happening in Southern California has the potential to completely change the game. So let's talk about where the market stood before this crisis, what's happening now, and what might come next. Now, before I continue on, I want to say that what is happening in Southern California is heart-wrenching. I have friends and family that live there, and so far they've been spared. But to the thousands of people affected, I can't even imagine what they're going through and what they will go through to move forward. And also, by no means is this video a political post of any kind. This is just looking into what could and might happen after this event. Let's start with this. California's housing market has been a real powerhouse, especially over the past few years. First, let's talk about home prices. Right now, the median home price across the state is a little bit above $850,000. That's already a big number compared to most states, but in cities like LA, San Francisco, or San Diego, it's even higher, well over $900,000 in many cases. In some of the most desirable neighborhoods, it's not uncommon to see homes selling for well over $1 million. Now, I know what you might be asking. How is that sustainable? Well, it all comes down to supply and demand. California has been dealing with the housing shortage for years, and it's not getting better anytime soon. There simply aren't enough homes to go around. For every buyer looking to purchase, there are just a handful of homes available, and that competition keeps prices high. But here's the kicker. Even with everything we've been through, pandemic disruptions, rising mortgage rates, and economic uncertainty, home values have stayed strong. In fact, they've grown by over 25% since 2020. Let that sink in for a moment. Despite some of the most challenging years in recent history, the housing market has not only survived, it's thrived. So what's driving this resilience? It's more than just the housing shortage. California's economy plays a huge role. This state is home to some of the most booming industries in the world. Think about tech in Silicon Valley, entertainment in Hollywood, and the massive agricultural industry that feeds this nation. These industries attract jobs, and those jobs attract people. It's a cycle that keeps the demand for housing sky high. And let's not forget, California isn't just about work. It's about a lifestyle. This state has a vibe that's hard to match. The beaches, the mountains, the perfect weather. It's the kind of place people dream about living in. Whether it's surfing in Malibu, hiking in Yosemite, or just soaking up the sunshine, California offers a quality of life that people are willing to pay a premium for. And it's not just Americans who feel this way. California attracts buyers and investors from all over the world. For many international buyers, owning a piece of California is like owning a slice of the American dream. So when you combine all of that, limited supply, strong demand, a booming economy, and an unbeatable lifestyle, you get a housing market that's not just surviving, but thriving. It's no wonder the market has been so resilient. But as strong as it's been, it's not invincible. The challenges we're facing now, like the wildfires, are putting new pressures on this market. So let's talk about that, what's happening, and how it could change things. Before these wildfires hit, as we entered 2024, the California housing market was in pretty good shape. In fact, things were looking solid. Let's start with home prices. By early 2024, prices were continuing to climb. The California Association of Realtors had forecasted a 6.2% increase in the statewide median home price for the year. That would have brought the median price to around, close to $900,000, a significant jump from previous years. This growth was largely driven by the same factors I just mentioned. low inventory, and high demand. Even in more affordable markets, prices were creeping up, keeping the competition fierce. Back in 2023, we saw a bit of a slowdown in the number of homes being bought and sold. Rising mortgage rates were a big factor. Rates had climbed to levels we hadn't seen in over a decade, and that made a lot of buyers hesitant. But by the end of the year and into early 2024, things started to stabilize. Mortgage rates weren't dropping dramatically, but they were steady enough for buyers to feel a little more confident about jumping back in. And then there's the big topic everyone always talks about: affordability. Let's be real, affording a home in California has been a struggle for years. By early 2024, though there was a slight improvement, about 17% of households could afford a medium-price home, which might not sound like a lot, but it was actually better than the 15% we saw at the end of 2023. Why was that? A mix of factors: slightly more inventory, some stabilization in prices, and buyers getting creative with financing options like adjustable rate mortgages or down payment assistance programs. One thing worth noting here is that the optimism in the market. There was this feeling of we can make this work among buyers, sellers, and even agents. Sure, challenges like affordability and inventory were still there, but the demand was undeniable. People were still eager to buy, and sellers were ready to take advantage of that. In short, the market was competitive, but it was also finding its rhythm again after the turbulence of the past few years. Demand was strong, and there was a sense that 2024 could be a year of steady growth for California real estate. And then, well, nature had other plans. And this is what I have always said on all of my market updates. To derail the market from its current trajectory, there has to be a major event that is unforeseen and cannot be accounted for. Frankly, for me, that was earthquake. But that major event turned out to be wildfires. And as we know, when a disaster of this scale hits, it doesn't just disrupt lives, it disrupts entire markets. So let's talk about what is happening and what happens next. Here's the thing, California has always dealt with wildfires. It's part of life here, but in the last few years, they've gotten worse, more intense, more frequent, and more disruptive. The fires we're seeing right now in Southern California, they're a perfect example of just how devastating these events can be. California sits on some of the most active fault lines in the world, and we've all heard about the looming threat of the big one. Here where I live in the East Bay, there's a bunch of multi-million-dollar homes that sits right on top of the Hayward Fault. I can't even begin to imagine what kind of devastation would happen if the big one happens on the Hayward Fault. So how is this affecting the housing market? Let me break it down. First, the hit to inventory. When entire neighborhoods are destroyed, it's a massive blow to housing inventory. California already has a supply problem, and when you factor in thousands of homes lost to fires every year, that problem gets even worse. Think about it. Every home destroyed means fewer options for buyers. And when inventory drops, the remaining homes become even more valuable. Prices in unaffected areas go up because competition gets tougher. If you're a buyer, that means you're paying more for less. And if you're a seller in a safe area, you're in the driver's seat. Second, the displacement effect. This is the human side of this. The families who lose their homes. These folks don't just disappear. They still need somewhere to live, and most of them turn to the rental market. This creates what I like to call the ripple effect. Displaced families flood the rental markets, driving up demand, and when demand spikes, so does rents. For renters who were already struggling to afford California prices, this makes an already tough situation even tougher. But it's not just about the numbers. There's also an emotional toll. Imagine losing your home, your safe space. Now you're competing for a rental while trying to rebuild your life. It's a heavy burden both financially and emotionally. Buying a home is one of the biggest decisions most people will ever make. And let's be honest, nobody wants to buy a house in an area where they feel unsafe. Wildfires don't just destroy property, they destroy peace of mind. For a lot of buyers, the idea of living in a high-risk area is becoming a deal breaker. It's not just about the fire itself. It's the stress of wondering every year, will this be the year my neighborhood burns down? That kind of uncertainty has a ripple effect on the housing market, especially in areas that have been hit by fires before. And this is where the earthquake curveball comes back into play. If wildfires are making people rethink where they live, imagine what an earthquake could do. California has some of the strictest building codes in the country, designed to make homes more resistant to earthquakes. But even with those protections, the threat of a major quake is always there. If something like the big one were to hit, we'd be looking at a housing crisis on a whole different scale. Thousands of homes destroyed, displaced families, skyrocketing insurance costs, and long-term disruptions to the market. The point is, whether it's wildfires or earthquakes, these natural disasters force people to make tough decisions about where they want to live and whether the risk is worth it. Fourth, insurance woes. This brings us to another huge factor, insurance. Wildfires have already made insuring homes in high-risk areas a nightmare. Premiums are skyrocketing. Some insurance companies are pulling out altogether in the market entirely. Homeowners are left scrambling to find coverage. Most homeowners don't even carry earthquake insurance because it's so expensive. If wildfires and earthquakes start hitting back to back, the insurance crisis could get even worse, driving up costs for everyone, whether you're at high risk or not. So here we are. Wildfires are devastating the housing market in ways we didn't expect, and earthquakes are the wild card that could make things even more complicated. All these things could create an environment that could collapse the housing market. Here's the thing, no matter how strong California's housing market has been, insurance is the silent foundation holding it all together. When that foundation starts to crack, everything above it, home prices, sales activity, and even buyer confidence can come tumbling down. Let's start with the loss of insurance coverage. When big players like State Farm, Allstate pull out of high-risk areas, homeowners are left with fewer options. That alone is destabilizing. But it's not just about finding a policy. It's about what happens to the housing market when insurance disappears. Think about it. Without insurance, lenders won't approve mortgages. That means buyers can't secure financing. And if buyers can't buy, sellers can't sell. It's a chain reaction that freezes the market. Homes in fire-prone or earthquake-prone areas could essentially become unsellable, trapping homeowners in properties they can't leave and making it nearly impossible for new buyers to enter the market. Now let's talk about the cost of insurance. Even in areas where coverage is still available, premiums are skyrocketing. We're talking about double or triple the previous rates, adding thousands of dollars to annual housing costs. For many families, that makes home ownership completely unaffordable. And here's where it gets even trickier. When premiums go up for high-risk areas, the increased costs don't stay confined to those regions. They spill over into the broader market. Insurance companies spread risk across their entire customer base, which means homeowners in safer areas also start seeing their premiums rise. This ripple effect impacts everyone, whether you're in a wildfire zone or a fault line or living in a relatively low-risk neighborhood. So what happens next? If homeowners can't afford their premiums or their coverage, more and more properties will go uninsured. Without insurance, lenders tighten up even further, making it harder to buy or refinance homes. And when fewer buyers can qualify for loans, demand starts to drop. Suddenly, the high competitive demand market we've been talking about starts to slow down or even grind to a halt. Sellers may have to accept significantly lower offers or pull their listings altogether. We've seen this before. After Hurricane Andrew in Florida, the housing market in the affected areas nearly collapsed. Insurers fled, Premiums skyrocketed, and the state had to create a public insurance option to stabilize the market. Even then, it took years for things to recover, and many homeowners were left struggling with unaffordable premiums or uninsured homes. California is now facing a similar moment. If insurance companies continue to pull back and if premiums keep climbing, we could see parts of the state's housing market become completely inaccessible. Wildfires and earthquakes are just the triggers. The real danger lies in how the insurance fallout disrupts the entire system. Here's the bottom line. The loss of insurance coverage or the inability to afford it doesn't just affect individual homeowners. It ripples through the entire market. It makes homes harder to buy, harder to sell, and ultimately less valuable. And in a state where housing plays such a crucial role in the economy, that's a risk we can't afford to ignore. This is the moment where we need to think critically about the future of housing in California. Whether it's through better wildfire prevention, smarter building codes, or the reform to the insurance system, solutions are needed fast. Otherwise, we could be looking at a market that gets stopped at its tracks. Hey, would love to hear your comments and feedback below. Thanks for watching.